Hey, good day. Michael DDA here. We've got Wayne from Australia on today, and he always says good day, so it seemed like appropriate. Last week, let me turn to, I should say the last time we were in Torah, remember last week we went through Yasher. Covered a lot of information that is going to be happening between chapter 19 and chapter 20 of Numbers. You know, you'd almost think that just because it goes from 19 to 20 that it's the next day. But there's 38 years, maybe 40 years that have gone by between one chapter and the next. The last thing we talked about in Torah was this business about the red heifer and the dead. And I thought, maybe we talked about the dead because we're about ready to go into a big fight. But no, that's not right, because we're going to, that's another 40 years away, 38 years away. But we know that 300,000 and 303,550 have to die in the wilderness in the next 38 years. So maybe Yehovah is preparing us for that. You know, this red heifer business, everybody makes such a big deal. Oh, we got to find a red heifer. Oh, if it's got a little white, gray hair in it, it's no good. And they play those games all the time. There's nothing significant about the red heifer. We're looking for a red cow. What we use it for and how we kill it is what's important. It's about cleansing people who have been in touch with death. Remember, Yehovah is all about life. Well, the next chapter we talked about is today. Whoops, that went to 21 for some reason. We want to go to 20. Look what the very first verse says. It says, then Israel's seed, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month. And the people stayed in Kadesh. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Things we got to talk about. You know, I'm not here every week. For me, I've got probably over 10,000 hours of study in Yehovah's words since 1998. I'm a student of the word, and I want you to become students of the word. Again, I'm not here for you. So when I say something like Israel's seed instead of the children of Israel, there's a reason for it. B'nai Israel is what the children of Israel is covering up. And they would have you believe that the children of Israel is both men and women. And you couldn't be further from the truth. B'nai Israel, which I always refer to as Israel's seed, are Ezra men. Men who have circumcised themselves. They've joined themselves to Yehovah. No, let's even take it back. They've left the kingdom of their birth. They've joined themselves to Yehovah and his people. Then they circumcised themselves and became Ezra men. When Yehovah talks about the seed and the land, they're the seed. Part of the reason why I call them Israel's seed. Multi-generations of spiritually born men. I want to show you something. This is a tab that I have. I call it Israel's seed are the Ezra. And I'm going to just shoot through this. I'm not going to even read it. But I want you to take the time, stop the video, study these things. Here's the first one where the Ezra, where the Ger actually becomes the Ezra in Exodus 12. Look at Leviticus 19:29. Look at Leviticus 17. There's a series of things that you've got to understand. Leviticus 18. I'm trying to stop this because I know if I keep moving, it's going to mess up your video. And I got to give it time to refresh. Look at 19. Look at Leviticus 23, Leviticus 24. Who is it that stays in the tents during Sukkot? It's not the ger. It's not the ladies. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before Yehovah. This is one of them. And then the last thing I have here is Numbers 9:14. Now it goes on. There's all kinds of places where you can see the Ezra men, but this is just a few that I pulled out that would help you understand who Israel's seed is. When Yehovah gave his 10 commandments, Numbers 20. Look at Numbers 19. I think I even have, not Numbers, Exodus 19. Do I have that in here? I guess I don't. But Exodus 19, he's talking to Israel's seed. It doesn't specifically use Ezra, but it's using B'nai Israel. You just have to figure out who B'nai Israel is. But he has them go up to the mountain. And then he says things like, thou shall keep the Sabbath. Thou and thy sons and thy daughters and thy ger and thy servants. Who's the thou? There's only one person left. That's the Ezra man. Then the 10th commandment says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thy neighbor's woman, or anything that belongs to thy neighbor. A woman is a property of a man. See, now what happens is people hear me say things like this, and because they don't like one thing that I say, they turn me off. And it's like jumping from the frying pan into the fire. You're hurting yourself. Listen to what I have to say and research. That's how you learn. I may hurt one of your false images, but maybe it is a false image and you need to move on. Woman's liberation has hurt us. Christianity has harmed us. I would call Jesus, Yeshua, the golden calf of the modern age, given to the world by the Catholic Church. Remember, they wanted to create a Catholic, one world, all-encompassing religion and turn you away from Yehovah and his ways. Well, that goes on for, you can't even imagine. NASA's involved in it. Education is involved in it. I can't even tell you how they're involved in it because you'll turn me off again. But this is just the first 5 words of this verse. So he's talking about Israel's seed, the Ezra men, and the whole congregation of them. It says the whole assembly of them came to the wilderness of Zin in the first month. First month? We were just in the second year. In the last chapter. Now we're in the first month. So is this the third year? No, we've got to dig deeper. Well, here's a clue. It says they were stayed in Kadesh. Let me show you where Kadesh is, because they're back again in this part of the world. Here's Kadesh, Kadesh Barnea. When they sent out the spies, we sent them out from here. The spies came back 40 days later, gave a false report, and Yehovah said that we were going to be in the wilderness for 40 years now because they gave a bad report and we wanted to go back to Egypt. 15,000 people died. I believe that was chapter 14 of Numbers. 14 or 15. They died. And when they got the bad news that we were going to be in the wilderness for 40 years and that everyone who came was going to die before the 40 years is up and not enter the land, we decided to go up to Hormah, here it is up here, and fight with them to start the campaign. But Yehovah said, I'm not going with you. Moses said, I'm not going with you. They didn't take the tabernacle. And they got whooped on and came back. Last week, we got some history about what had been going on with Sihon, king of the Amorites. He lives, here, let me show you. Let me make this a little bit smaller. I'll go to 30. He lives in this part of the world. And he's taking Moab's spot. He brought, remember, we talked about Balaam and Beor, his father, brought him down from the Mesopotamian valley to curse Moab. And they did. And he took Moab's land all the way down to the Arnon River. Here's the Arnon River right here. So he took their land from here all the way to here. What else did we see last week? We talked about Balaam. We talked significantly about Balaam. We saw that after they took Sihon, they took him out, they went after the king of Bashan. What was his name? Og, king of Bashan was his name. And we took him out. Well, actually, we're going to start that campaign next week. Very exciting. But for a while, we wandered back down, all the way back down into this part of the world where Sinai is, and around into here. This would be Uz, the land of Uz, U-Z. Didn't bother Seir, didn't bother Moab. Sihon, king of the Amorites, took Moab 20 years into our 40 years in the wilderness. See, we got to get these background understandings. They're very important for us to understand where we're coming from and where we're going. Remember, well, if you've been with me for these many months, we're on 160 teachings, and we're only to Numbers 20. But we see and have seen the animosity that Israel's seed has with Edom, Esau, and vice versa. So, Yasher has given us some very helpful clues. Let me show you. We're talking about the first month. First month of what year? We're in Kadesh, but Miriam died. Well, look what it says in Yasher. But this is the first month of the 40th year. 38 to 40 years have now passed since the last verse in Numbers 19. I thought maybe the 40 years was going to start when Yehovah first started, but it seems like Yasher says a little bit different. Look what Yasher says, 84:24. So the whole congregation came to the wilderness of Sin. There it was, the wilderness of Sin at Kadesh, in the first month of the 40th year from their departure from Egypt. I was surprised. I would have thought it would be the 38th year or something along those lines. It seems that Yehovah is counting in the 40 years, the 2 years that we were at Sinai and before we sent out the spies. 40th year of the departure from Egypt, it says. And Israel's seed dwelt there in Kadesh of the wilderness of Sin, and Miriam died there, and she was buried there. There it is. Now we've fixed a timeline. Thank you, Yasher, once again, giving us extra information that we wouldn't have known to figure out. I mean, if we would have thought about it, we would have realized, gee, we're already getting ready to go into the promised land in 21. Where did all the time go by? Well, thankful we have Yasher to tell us what's been going on during those 40 years. Well, look at the very next verse. And the one after that, for that matter. Look what it says. Now, there was no water for the congregation. And they gathered together against Moses and Aaron. Oh, my Elohim. Do these men ever learn? Their fathers, remember, these are men who weren't even around when Israel's seed was numbered in Numbers 1. And they still got the same funky attitudes. But these are the sons of the men who have died in the wilderness over the last 40 years. They learned nothing. They're gathering together against Moses and Aaron. And the people, who's the people? We're talking about Ezra men. They're the people, not the lady people, not the Ger people. We're talking about the Ezra men, contended with Moses and spoke, saying, if only, look what they're saying, if only we had died when our brethren died. If only we had died during the last 40 years before Yehovah. Are you kidding me? But they're just like their dads. Oh my gosh. And they didn't even see the leeks in the olives and the succulent foods of Egypt. Keep in mind, these men have seen a pillar of fire and smoke every day for 40 years. Well, some of them were born later, I suppose, but could have seen them every day for 40 years. They've been eating manna that falls every morning in the wilderness their whole life. Say it that way. And now they're complaining. We're on the verge of going into the promised land, and now they're complaining? You got to be kidding me. Look what they say. Why have you brought up the assembly, Yehovah's assembly, into this wilderness, that we and our animals should die here? We got no water. It's beyond water, though, because look at the next verse. And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? We're on the doorway of the promised land, and they're calling it an evil place. You know, a lot of people see in the flesh and not in the spirit. I guess that's the difference between 3D and 5D. They see what's all around them, but not what Yehovah is doing in the earth. Why have you made us come out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place of grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, nor is there any water to drink. I put evil place. Yeah, right. Now they're finally in a position where they can see the great arm of Yehovah work for them, just like he did for their dads. I bet most of these men were not even born when that happened. Some were. Remember, they were numbered. All the wells were numbered from 20 years old and above were going to die in the wilderness. So there were some who were less than 20 years. Yes, they got to come out of Egypt. They got to see the water separate. They got to at least hear what happened on Mount Sinai if they weren't on Mount Sinai, because I think they had to be 20 years old and above to go up to Mount Sinai. But big things have happened. But now look what happens. It says, so Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly. That's the same word as the congregation above in verse 1, to the door of the tent of meeting. And they fell on their faces. You know, every time the people talk bad about Moses, talk bad about Yehovah and their situation, Moses and Aaron, I like to think of it as drop and cover, duck and cover. Maybe drop and cover is actually better. Because look at, they did it here. Numbers 14, several times. It was Numbers 14 where the people wanted to go back to Egypt. Korah was leading a rebellion. So they said to one another, let us select a leader and return to Egypt. And Moses and Aaron fell on their faces. 16. They gathered together against Moses and said to them, you take too much upon yourselves, for all the congregation is holy, every one of them. Don't you know? Why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly? Here's another one in number 16. This is Korah. Gathered all the congregation against them at the door of the tent of meeting. Then the glory of Yehovah appeared to the congregation, and Yehovah spoke with Moses and Aaron. Separate yourselves from them. This is another one where they're ducking and covering, falling on their face. It says that in verse 22, then they fell on their faces and said, oh, Yehovah, no, oh, Elohim, Elohim of the Spirit of Elohim, the Spirit, the Elohim of all flesh spirit. Shall one man sin and you be angry at all the congregation? It seems like constantly they're talking Yahweh down. And after they dealt with the many people who died, the 250 who died, and Korah, when the ground opened up, the very next day, the people complained about that. I can't even read it. 42. So suddenly a cloud covered. Let me go to 42. I can just click on it and get to it easily. Here it is. Now it happened when the congregation had gathered against Moses and Aaron, there it is again, and they turned towards the tabernacle of meeting, and suddenly a cloud covered it, and the glory of Yehovah appeared. And Moses and Aaron came before the tabernacle, and Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, get away from this congregation. They were complaining. Look, I guess I should have gone to 41. On the next day, all the congregation of Israel's seed complained against Moses and Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of Yehovah. They don't get it. They just don't get it. And here they are, falling on their faces again in verse 45. And now, in our present situation, here we are again. They're falling on their faces because the people are saying these terrible things, showing so little faith. We're going to talk about faith in a moment. Well, Moses and Aaron, they went to the presence. They went from the presence of the assembly to the tent of meeting. It sounds to me like they're outside the large veil that is between the holy place. Remember, there's a holy place, then there's a holy of holy place. Outside the tent, if you will, on their faces before Yehovah, and Yehovah's appearing to them. That's what it looks like to me. This is they always want to call it the tabernacle of meeting, but it's really Ohel Moed is the word, is the Hebrew that they're using, which is the appointment tent. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, take the rod. You and your brother Aaron. Gather all the congregation together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their people. Take the rod. You know, for a while I thought this must be the rod of Moses, because that's what he used the last time he struck a rock. It was the rock at Horeb, which split down the middle. Remember, it provided water for a year in the wilderness. But this is not that rod. This is a different rod. Let me talk to you about that for a moment. It's very appropriate that this rod is the one that Yehovah is telling them to grab. So I originally thought this was talking about Moses' rod, the rod of Elohim. But this rod is Aaron's rod. I think I've got a note here about Aaron's rod. Yes, I do. Okay. Now, all that needs to happen is for Moses to hold the rod and speak to the rock. What did Yehovah say? Take the rod, you and Aaron, and speak to the rock before their eyes. You have to ask yourself, why would Yehovah want them to speak to the rock instead of hitting the rock like he did before? And I don't have the answer for that. I've got some theories, perhaps, but I'm not prepared to share those. This time Moses is to do something different than last time. But I think that this time Moses is mad and acting out of his flesh. We're going to see that in the next couple verses. 40 years ago, Moses struck the rock. Here it is. This is Exodus 17, 5-7. And Yehovah said to Moses, go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. Remember, they're all men. The people are all men people. Yes, are men. That's what we're talking about. Also take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river. That's the rod of Elohim. And go Behold, I will stand before you there at the rock of Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah. Meribah, that's interesting, Meribah. Why Meribah? Because the rock that we're going to talk about today is the waters of Meribah. Because of the contention of Israel's seed, that's why. And because they tempted Yehovah, saying, is Yehovah among us or not? Is Yehovah among us or not? That's a question everybody needs to answer. Because if he is, we have some duties and responsibilities that he created for us to do. For a man and for a woman, they are different duties and responsibilities. Remember, men go off to war. Men own the land. Men go into the tabernacle. Only a man can become an Ezra man. Men lead their women. Sometimes multiple women. Ladies don't go into the tabernacle. Ladies don't go off to war. Ladies don't own land. It's all about getting the correct picture so that we can see what's going on. Now it says, so Moses took the rod before Yehovah. They tell us which rod he took. The rod that is before Yehovah, as he commanded him. What's the rod that we're talking about? Look at this. This is 17:10. And Yehovah said, this is remember when they had to all pick rods, each tribe, and Levi, or Aaron used for Levi's rod. His rod ended up sprouting and bearing fruit as a sign to the rebels that he was the one who was supposed to be leading them. Well, here it is. It says, bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony. Now, this is not outside the tabernacle. This is in the holy place, before the testimony, which would put it in front of the altar of incense, between the altar of incense and the veil that is between the holy place and the most holy place where the tabernacle is at, where the testimony is at. That's the way he called it, the testimony, before the testimony. To be kept as a sign against the rebels, that you may put their complaints away from me, lest they die. Well, this goes on, because look at what the very next verse says. I'm going to read it on the right. These are Israel's seed who are being gathered. And Yehovah said to Moses, bring Aaron's rod back before the testimony. This is where he told him to put it. To be a sign, to be kept as a sign for a rebellious seed. For a rebellious seed. This is the seed. This is B'nai. B'nai Mari. A rebellious seed. For, there's the for right there. For a rebellious seed. That you may put their complaints away from me, lest they die. This is the rod that he's bringing to these people who are acting just like their dads. Oh my. 21. Then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rod twice, or struck the rock twice with his rod. He was told to speak to the rock, but Moses didn't obey Yehovah. He did something different. He hit the rock. He was supposed to speak to the rock. It says, then Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock twice with his rod. He's angry at the people. Look what he just said. Here now, you rebels. Must we bring water out of this rock? Actually, I think I skipped that, didn't I? And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, he's calling them rebels. Remember, the rod was assigned to the rebels. Is it appropriate that he would go bring that rod? I think so. Struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly. Look, the water still came out. What a gracious Elohim. Moses disobeyed, but the water still came out for the congregation and for their animals. But look what it says next. Then Yehovah spoke. Oh, I wonder if I can make this bigger. Sorry, I haven't done that before. Then Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron. Look what he says. Because y'all, Aaron and Moses, I think Aaron got a bum deal. Because he didn't hit the rock. Moses hit the rock. But look what's going to happen to Aaron. Because you did not believe me. Believe me. Oh, there's some interesting words. To hallow me in the eyes of Israel's seed. Therefore you shall bring this assembly. You shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. Because you did not believe me. Believe. Faith. Because you did not have faith in me. Because you did not believe me. I remember as a teenager going to Christian camps and different things as a college student. And they would kind of teach faith, they have such strange ideas about what faith is and belief. And so they would have somebody stand on a box, and then they would have to fall back without using their hands and trust that somebody's going to catch them. And they said, that is faith. I think that's a lie. Faith is believing your Elohim, a spiritual Elohim, and acting upon his statutes and his judgments and his ordinances. If you're not doing it according to his ways, it isn't faith. How many people just say, oh, just pray in Jesus' name for healing. Jesus' name? Where does that even come from? I gotta show you something here. Let me show you this verse. 2012. Here we're still talking about the rebels. This is going to come in just a moment. But I put belief, faith. It's about actions being done in accordance with Yehovah's word. An invisible Elohim, an invisible lawmaker and judge. That's faith. And what so many people do is they presume, I think is a really good word, that they should receive something because they're asking in Jesus' name. Look what Yehovah says. Talking about Israel. This is Deuteronomy 4. For what great nation is there that has Elohim so near to it as Yehovah, our Elohim, is to us? For whatever reason we may call upon him. See, it's not about using the magic words. It's about becoming Yehovah's people. And what great nation is there that has such statutes and judgments, righteous judgments, as are in all this Torah, which I set before you this day? Faith. What does Yehovah say? He says, love Yehovah. This is Deuteronomy 19, I think 18. Love Yehovah with all your heart, your labab, with all your soul, your nefesh, thoughts and emotions, and with all your me'od is strength, which are things done in accordance with Yehovah's ways. If it's not done in accordance with Yehovah's ways, it's not moed. I'm sorry, me'od. And it's not love. It might be love of self, but it's not love of Yehovah, because we're not doing it according to his ways. This is talking about Moses and Aaron. You know, what this says to me, Moses and Aaron, specifically Moses, didn't do what he was supposed to do. And even Moses, if he doesn't obey Yehovah's word, gets consequences. If nothing, this should put the fear of Yehovah into each of our hearts, men. Ladies too. But ladies have different duties and responsibilities than a man does. A man is to obey Yehovah's words given through Moses. These guys are rebels. Here's just a heads up. Do I want to use this yet? I'll probably come to it again. I think I'll wait. But this was the water of Meribah. Well, we were talking about the rebels. Where's the rebels here? Where did he call them rebels? Was it a little further back than that? No. Oh, there it is. Verse 10. Look at rebels. Mare. Rebel, this, for a rebellious seed. Mare. Mare. Mem, Resh, Yod. Now we're down here. Here it is. Mem, Resh, Yod. Same word used a little bit differently. It's saying that Aaron and Moses rebelled against Yehovah's word. See how it's about Yehovah's word? And they called this the waters of Meribah. So here's Merivot. No, it's Meritem. And this is Meribah. Meribah. The waters of Meribah. Same word being used, just in a different way. Mare. Mare. Rebel. How many people rebel? Mare. Against Yehovah's words. Oh, they're not for today, don't you know? Yeah, they are. They are. He goes on. This is the water of Meribah, because Israel's seed contended with Yehovah. And it says, and he was hallowed among them. It makes no sense at all. He was hallowed. He was not hallowed among them. They contended. Maybe they would not be hallowed, was it? Well, here's some other translations. This might even be mine. This is Meribah's water, because Israel's seed, no, this is an even older translation than Israel's seed strove with Yehovah, and he was holy. That's what I believe it says. And here's ESV, which is the English Standard Version, and the BBE is the Bible in Basic English. Not really a translation, but this is what they say. These are the waters of Meribah, where the people of Israel quarreled with Yehovah and quarreled with Yehovah, and through them he showed himself holy. There's one way of saying it. These are the waters of Meribah, because Israel's seed went among Yehovah, and they saw that he was holy among them. So they're trying to get a more precise translation. This one is almost opposite. He was hallowed among them. Obviously, he wasn't hallowed among them. It doesn't even say among them. It just says he was hallowed. Well, translating as hallowed, I think translating it as holy, he was holy, works better. So in a sense, I like my translation a little bit better. Go figure. Now, it says Moses sent messengers. This is a new change of pace now. We're changing gears because we're getting ready to go into the promised land. It says, and Moses sent messengers from Kadesh, this is Kadesh Barnea, to the king of Edom. King of Edom. Who's Edom? Remember, that is Esau's seed. Esau's kingdom, or Esau took Seir and renamed the kingdom of Seir as the kingdom of Edom. So this is all Esau's people. And so here, I'm going to read for a little bit further. It says, now Moses sent the messenger from Kadesh to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel. I mean, the king that he's talking to is not a brother of even Esau, but he's leading Esau's people. They always took kings that came from other nations, unlike Israel, who always takes kings from among the brethren. They do things that are always opposite of Yehovah's ways. I think, this is just my own personal opinion, that Esau's seed and the Khazarians may even be related, dare I say, because they are in direct opposition to Yehovah's ways, even now. And they did it where they were then as well. But look what it says. Thus says your brother Israel. You know all the hardships that has befallen us, how our fathers went down to Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt a long time. And the Egyptians afflicted us and our fathers. When we cried out to Yehovah, he heard our voice and sent an angel and brought us up out of Egypt. Now here we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. Please, let us pass through your country. We will not pass through fields or vineyards. We will not drink water from wells. We will go along the king's highway. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. We will not turn aside to the right or to the left until we have passed through your territory. But we're going to wait before we talk about what Edom's response is going to be. But you think Edom doesn't know all this? Remember, Esau died at the cave of Machpelah outside Bethany. about halfway through our time in Egypt, maybe even less than halfway. Esau wanted to keep his brother from being buried in that cave with his mom and dad. And they fought. And one of the sons of Jacob, a deaf mute, actually one of the sons of Jacob, a deaf mute, whacked off his head. And there has been war with those guys ever since. I mean, they already had bad times, but it got even worse after that. And we talked about that in Yasher, and we see the animosity grow and grow and grow. Well, here's what Yasher has to say about what we just read, those few verses. So the whole congregation came to the wilderness of Sin in the first month of the 40th year from the departure of Egypt. And Israel's seed dwelt there in Kadesh of the wilderness of Sin. And Miriam died there and was buried there. Fix this. At that time, Moses sent messengers to Hadad. Now we're knowing who the king is that he's sending messengers to. King Hadad, saying, "Thus says thy brother, let me pass, I pray thee, through thy land. We will not pass through field or vineyard. We will not drink the water of the well. We will walk on the king's road." Telling him exactly where they're going to be in his land. So Hadad, if you go to chapter 36 of Genesis, we kind of see all the kings of Edom. And Hadad was the fourth king of Edom. Bela the first. Remember, he came from Africa. He's the son of Beor. He was 15 when they first started talking about Bela. Bela is the brother of Balaam. They were brothers. So interesting. He got chosen because he also was wise to be the first king of Edom. Again, not a son of Esau, a man from a foreign land. Then we had Yobab and Cusham. And now here we are at Hadad. I believe that Bela died fighting Israel. He brought a bunch of people down to Israel. He brought people from the east, which would be Ishmael's seed. He brought Moab. He brought the king of Africa. And he brought himself to fight against Joseph and the people of Egypt. And the people of Egypt sent the Israelites, like 100 of them, in ahead of everybody else. And we killed 200,000 men and drove that massive army. I couldn't even number it, it says. It was innumerable. Drove them out of the land. Oh, and boy, that's an interesting story too, because Egypt's men who were in the army got great fear of us because they put us ahead and they did not support us. And we ended up killing some of those guys as well in the road. Anyway, that's another really interesting story. Yasher has so much. So now here we're going to talk about the response. Let me just talk about where we're talking about. The angel. Which angel? Who's the angel? Is Moses the angel? Who's the messenger? It's Melech. Yehovah sent the messenger. He sent the messenger and brought us out of Egypt. Is that Moses? Is that the the pillar of fire and smoke? I don't know. Here, we're on the border. What did Jesus say? Please let us pass vineyards, King's Highway. Yeah, let's talk about this map for just a second. Here's the map. This is the King's Highway. Can you see this right here? This is the King's Highway. We apparently want to come in through here. We're at Kadesh. They're asking to come down here and go through the King's Highway this way. This is the King's Highway. This is the desert way. Or the desert route, I guess they call it, which is further out. But many travel that direction, probably to avoid cities. But we wanted to go this way, and we wanted to end up here at Le'avarim, which is right on this road, the King's Highway. Here's Kadesh. We're going to talk about Mount Hor in just a moment. Here's Mount Hor, right on remember we were talking about Mount Seir was actually a mountain range last week. This is Mount Seir. This is the Seir mountain range. And this is where Esau's seed, Edom, primarily lives right in this area. Basra, Selah, and that. Now, please let us pass through your country. We will go along the King's Highway. We will not turn aside to the right or to the left, pass through the land. And Edom said to him, you shall not pass through my land, lest I come against you with sword. And Israel's seed said to him, we will go by the highway. They're still persisting. And if I or my livestock drink any of your water, then I will pay for it. Let me only pass through on foot, nothing more. But look at what he says. Remember, there is antagonism against Esau's seed. From Esau to Jacob's seed. He hates Israel. Then he said, you shall not pass through. You shall not pass through. So Edom came out against them with many men, with a strong hand. Thus Edom refused to give Israel passage through his territory, so Israel turned away from him. Remember, Yehovah already told them, you will not fight against Esau's seed. Now Israel's seed, the whole assembly, journeyed from Kadesh and came to Mount Hor. I just showed you where Mount Hor is. Right on the mountains of Seir. Look at this. They've got to be being watched at this point. They're coming from Kadesh. They're going to Mount Hor. Here it is right here. Do you think Esau's seed doesn't have spies or lookouts, at least, looking for potential problems of Israel going ahead and coming through his land, even though he just told them, no, you're not going to do it? Yet this is where Yehovah is sending them right now, to Mount Hor. And doesn't it say it's right on Esau's border? Where are we reading it here? Yeah. And Yehovah spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron, look at this. Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter the land which I have given to Israel's seed, because ye rebelled. Ye all rebelled. This is 24. There it is right there. Yeah. Ye rebelled. That's not thou rebelled. It's you and Aaron rebelled against my word Don't rebel against Yehovah's word at the waters of Meribah. So again, there's the Mari being used there and Mari being used there. This one is Meritem, and this is Meribah. But they're both talking about rebellion. Now he says, take Aaron. So he must be talking, here he was talking to Moses. And Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron. Oh no, he's speaking to Moses and Aaron. And now he says, Aaron shall be gathered to his people. That's what it was. So he says, take Aaron. So obviously this is for Moses now. Take Aaron and Eleazar, his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son. For Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. You know, we don't really talk about the sons of Eleazar and Ithamar. There are only two remaining sons. If he's going to take out Aaron, right now the priesthood seems to be 3 people, doesn't it? But I think there's probably more involved. I think that Eleazar has sons, probably Ithamar has sons as well, that are involved in the priesthood. We're going to see them come up as we go through some of the coming chapters. He says, strip Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son. Remember, Eleazar is the eldest. Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there. Well, okay, how does that work? All 3 of them are going to go up to the mountain. They're going to put Aaron's clothing, the priestly garments, on Eleazar, and Aaron's going to die. Does he lay down? Does he just close his eyes, go to sleep? Is he hit by lightning? What? How does he die? But he doesn't come back down with them. We don't know. It's a mystery. So Moses did just as Yehovah commanded. And they went up to Mount Hor in the sight of the congregation, the sight of the assembly. Whoops, what did I do here? There we go. Sight of the assembly, the congregation. Talking about Israel's seed. Moses stripped Aaron of his garments and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. What happened to Eleazar? Or what happened to Aaron? And now, when the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, all the house of Israel mourned for Aaron 30 days. So this was, remember, he was going to die. We saw in Yasher, he was supposed to die on the first day of the 5th month. They don't say that in here. Isn't that funny that they don't say that? I'm surprised I didn't put that down also, but I didn't. Yeah, it's the 5th month, first day of 5th month. So they're going to mourn for him a whole month. That's going to make it the beginning of the 6th month that more action is going to be started. It's actually going to go on with King, here it is right here. King Arad is the king that we're going to fight with next. Well, Yasher talked about it last week. This Torah is not going to tell us much more about what's going on with King Arad, but there was a lot more that went on. We'll talk about it next week, and then we're going to come back up, and we're going to end up here. And we're going to attack Moab. Actually, we're going to go from here to the desert route, and then to Kedemot, where we're going to talk with Sihon, king of the Amorites. Well, it's an interesting story. how it all fits together. I hope you've been able to follow some of the things I've been saying today. I know I've added some other pieces of knowledge that I've gleaned throughout my studies. And we've talked about it many times as we've gone through Yasher and through these things. But it's easy to forget, and not everyone has heard those before. Anyway, we'll pick it up next week. We're going to be beginning our journey and actually taking the entire west side of the Jordan River Valley. From way up here, Mount Hermon, almost to Damascus, all the way down to the Arnon River. Arnon River, all the way down to here. It's going to be from Manasseh and Gad and one other tribe. I want to say Asher, but I'm not sure that's correct. We'll find out. You guys, thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you again next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye now.